Chris Carrier began to build race cars before he had a driver's license. And nearly 50 years later, he's still contending for wins in NASCAR. He has spent his career working against the odds, and along the way, Carrier has accomplished something that only one other man has ever done. There are only 14 crew chiefs in the history of NASCAR that have won in the Truck Series, the Busch Xfinity, what have you series, and the Cup Series. And you are one of those.
Wow. Okay.
Now, on top of that, there are only two men in the history of NASCAR who have won those three series as well as K&N and ARCA. And you are one of those. Lance McClure, who spent his whole career pretty much at Hendrick in top equipment. That says a lot about what you have done.
I appreciate that. I do. That's a little overwhelming. But it also, I have been really fortunate the way my career kind of went along. I was, from this area. I was basically raised about 1.5 miles from Bristol Speedway. And when I first went around any race cars, I was like 14. Went to Ed Whitaker's shop and grew to be very close friends with Larry Utzman, who at that time lived 6-7 minutes from me. He was driving Ed's car at the time, late model sportsman. And at that time, they had just kind of moved up from limited sportsman racing, which, mostly dirt tracks, to late model sportsman on asphalt. And Larry used to come by the house, my parents' house, and pick me up as a kid. I wouldn't know what to drive. And Larry would come by and get me and take me to the shop. And that was kind of the only way my mother would agree to what was going on, because she was like, "You're going to do what?" Fortunately, my dad knew Larry's dad. He could calm my mom down and say, our son's not going to come home drunk every night. And they're not going to be doing stuff. They're not going to steal or anything like that. They're up there working on race cars. And of course, Ed was a hard-nosed businessman. Ed was a survivor. He had a lot of stuff going on to bring income. He had service stations and fixed cars and fixed houses. By the time my mom met all these people and met Ed's wife, Maxine Whitaker, who was kind of my second mother, everything was fine. And then she started going to races, so everything was real good. Since then, I have been very fortunate to be around a lot of people, down to the bone racers, that taught me a lot of things that hard to learn. It's been hard to learn on your own. And then I was around privilege. Just I don't know how all this happened, but to be around the number of drivers that I've been that really were top of the game, and Ed had a lot of those guys in his cars over the years. My father and my uncle had a guy in Bluff City that worked on their personal cars. His name was Larry McClellan. He's still down there fixing cars, one of the best I've ever seen. And he helped on Ed's race cars. When they went to the local, his name was Larry McClellan. Back then they called him Oops. Don't ask me why. He taught me a lot of the bone fundamentals of suspension and chassis and how to make a car, and that's a car drive good and handle, and what would make it turn better or tighter. And he taught me how to read a front end gauge. He taught me what tire stagger was. He taught me about air pressure. He taught me about wedge, what that meant, and all this stuff, the beginnings of it. And I was 14, 15 years old. I went to Bluff City Junior High. That time was up through 9th grade. See, and after in the spring there, and even in the fall when we were racing at Kingsport, I would get out of, I think I had study hall, and I would go straight over here to it's basically right across the street. And he had a little bitty shop. He got a good reputation about his race cars being quality and being fast cars and being able to run up front. And Ed was, like I say, a hard worker, aggressive car owner. He knew that he didn't want to go just to be there. But he was an expert at a lot of stuff, and that's what got me going. I could not wait for classes to be over, especially on Friday night. Ed would bring his car down there to Larry, and he would go through that afternoon, and he'd go through the front end, and he'd check all this stuff and tune the carburetor and all this stuff. Me and him and maybe somebody else would load it up on the truck and go over to Kingsport and race on Friday nights. And that just that was, I could not wait. And like from that time, it was like, okay, I got to figure out how am I going to do this for a living?
Right.
Because not many people did. Hardly anybody in this area.
Sure.
Hardly anybody.
Yeah.
And I saw people come to Kingsport, and there were very, very, very few people that had an employee. Yeah. And I'm thinking,
and this is mid-70s, right?
This is 75, 76. Okay. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I went really originally. I knew, okay, this might not happen, and I wanted to be a history teacher and a basketball coach. That was my aspiration. And
I think you chose better.
By the time I was a senior in high school, I knew that, like, okay, it's I got to do something in racing. By the time I was a senior, I knew. First race that I can remember going to was 1970 in March. I had not turned 10 years old yet. 3 other guys that we were in the 4th grade got together. Parents, I can't remember exactly how we did it, but they let us off, and we went to watch the race. We didn't have a ticket, couldn't afford that, but we went up to that, sat, laid on the ground outside that old barn that used to be up behind Turn 3 in Bristol, and we watched the 1970 Southeastern 500, and it was spitting snow all day. And we went there, the 4 of us went by ourselves with no parent. You know, nowadays they probably put half the family in jail if you did something like that. But we watched the whole race, or one of our parents picked us up after the race, froze to death. But that's where I fell in love with Richard Petty. He ran second, that Petty blue Plymouth, that same color, is that right there? And I was just like, oh my gosh, I love that. Whoever it is, I love it. Charlie Glotzlak won the race, and I was bit right there.
For Chiefing, by football comparison or what have you, it's the coach of the team, really.
I think so. I think it's it's communication, it's giving direction, it's trying to motivate people, and trying to be the guy that, like, okay, it's the buck stops here, so if there's no, like, pass it on to the next guy. It's like, and I think that's what, to me, I think that's what makes successful people in life, no matter what it is. If you're running a gas station, a grocery store, coaching a football team, or whatever.
How old were you, and can you tell us about your first crew chief experience?
Well, the first time, got to realize that back in the mid 70s, late 70s, and even on up in the early 80s, especially when racing at a local level. Not the Cup Series, but even what is now Xfinity Series. It was mostly teams that were local level. Like we would go to Kingsport, Lonesome Pine, then we'd venture over to Hickory and in Franklin County, Virginia, and some places like that. Those were long trips, and for us, those, but they were that way all over. And at that time, it was the guy the guy was the crew chief was simply the guy that spent the most time there. Yeah. The first time I actually won a race that I would say I was the crew chief was actually in the spring of 1979. I had graduated high school. I was not quite 19 years old. I was still 18 years old. I was going to East Tennessee State University. Larry Utzman had left Ed, had come to drive for Charlie Henderson in what at that time was the Food World Pontiac. We built a new car over the winter. Mike Laughlin, the brand new turnkey car. His brother Jackie Laughlin. This was all in Greenville, South Carolina. Built a brand new car. Man, that thing was bad. Whoa. It was. That thing was. And we took it to the racetrack, the first race at Kingsport, and just stomped them. And it was really, and I was like, oh gosh, this just happened. We won 3 races that year, which was the first races that Charlie ever won.
Okay. I would say that was something you're never going to forget.
Oh, no.
You hop back over to Ed Whitaker's place.
I want to say early 80s, somewhere in there, early to mid 80s. He had a 2-bay cinder block building behind his house.
Oh, wow.
We kept the race cars up, did the body work and painted them there. did all the mechanic work there. Eventually did a good bit of like body metal fabrication there and doing, duct work and windows and crush panels. And on top of that, he built his own engines in that room in the same place. So I don't know how we mixed all that. And, it was not exactly the plush environment, but Ed won a lot of races. Ed's cars won a lot of races out of that two bay building.
Maybe 81, Connie Saylor out of Johnson City.
80 and 81.
Remember him?
I believe. Oh yes, Connie had driven what is now called Cup Series cars for GC Spencer,
Good.
And had raced locally. Connie worked hard. Connie was a really good, we called it big track or super speedway driver, and he drove a few races for Ed over probably a 3-year period. Daytona, Charlotte, places like that. He ran 4th at Charlotte one year.
Mm-hmm. I want to say 81. I saw some footage of
Yeah,
him rolling down.
That was GC's car.
Okay.
That was number 4, the Mitco car.
Gotcha.
And as I remember, I think our car was number 4 also, when we put Connie's name on the car. And I do remember one thing about that, and I'm thinking it was 81. That was in a qualifying race for the Daytona 500. We had not planned on practicing or doing anything that day. We were just there. I remember Connie came over after that. It didn't really hurt him, but it was kind of a big deal. He was upside down and slid on his roof for 1,500 feet or something. I mean, it was a scary thing. And he came over that afternoon, and he said right after that, they checked him out and everything. He said, I want to practice that car of yours. It was a practice session, but we hadn't planned on running it. We could practiced for a week, and I said, okay. He said, if I don't get in it today, he said, I might not get back in. He said, I got to get in there and get back on that horse. Okay. So we scurried around and got the tires aired up and did whatever we had to do to get going, warmed the motor up and everything. And he went out and practiced just a few laps that afternoon. He said, okay, I'm good.
Wow.
Connie was good to me personally. He was a good person, which he also drove sportsman cars. They were called sportsman cars at the time, for David Aker Jr., who was Aker Funeral Home in Bristol.
Yeah.
But they kept they had a couple of race cars, and they kept them in the garage of the funeral home. And worked on and behind the funeral home at that time. And I don't know, all the people that was around him and everything and kind of came along were very good to me. A good set of guys, and I learned a lot from him. And he like our best finish, I want to say it was 82. I'm not positive of that, but we finished 4th at Charlotte in Ed's car, and Connie was like always very complimentary of our equipment. I remember the history said that's the best driving car I've ever drove. And I'm like, first time I really saw what a real crew chief does or has to be. It was like 1980, maybe, or 81. I'm not sure. Earnhardt was driving for Austria, and Jake Elder was his crew chief. It's a guy that needs to be in the Hall of Fame. I remember it was Saturday morning. We had already been over there like 3 days. Earnhardt had his own car there. They weren't doing great. They qualified really back. I don't know. Didn't really pay that much attention, but I noticed it. We were getting our car ready, getting cleaned up and stuff. Gate to the Winston Cup shop, the fences. I looked it up, and he's Earnhardt with 3 people with him, and they killed us with him. Well, I never really met Joe, but I knew who he was. Intimidating guy. They go walking by. His car's down here on the other end of the garage from us. It's basically just an asphalt down there. And they walked up, and Tony Racine was his crew chief from his gang. They were getting their car ready to push out, go down here through inspection. We had to race in a couple hours or so, I seen Earnhardt, he starts talking, and he's doing this. Jake's doing this. I could see the faces he was talking to, Yuri and some of his guys, and they're going. And I think, this ain't good. About that time, Earnhardt was turned around and walked off, you know, that strut going on back up there on Bill Earnhardt. And like, you know, and Jake's standing there and he, like it's right here, and then he starts doing this. Well, next thing I knew, they jacked that baby up on 4 jack stands, took all the tires off, and started disassembling. I mean, they took springs out, they took shocks off. I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? The next thing happened was they brought a cart or something over there and had a big pile of springs and shocks and all this stuff. He changed everything on it. He was pushing springs down on the ground, you know, pushing, you know, feeling, not rating them, just feeling them. And the shocks the same way. And he's like, put this on here, put that on. They're changing everything on that car. They changed the sway bar. And he goes through, and then he back then, you didn't have scales. You checked the wedge, what they call it, in the center of the housing. You measured it. You had a measurement from the ground up to the left rear versus ground up to the right rear. And he's measuring that. And he's reading that tape measure. He's going around. They jack some of the bolts, you know. And what are they doing? We got to race here in a little bit. And anyway, he set that whole car up right there. And they all had their shirt tails out. They were the last one to go through tech. He reading that caster camera gauge, lined the front end. They changed the top A-frame, I think, or whatever. I mean, this is a massive overhaul. And they're working on it going up through to go through tech. They're the last one to go through tech. And I'm like, man, I'd hate to be them. What's going to happen when they start that race? He's not even had a lap of practice. They threw that green flag. And that son of a gun, he started like 30th. Up through there like a hot knife through butter. Just, and I'm like, what did I just see? And it hit me. Now I can't remember if he won the race that day. I can't remember what we did. I just can't remember anything else about it. But I remember getting home. And my mom and dad were like, you know, I was just like perplexed. Like, oh God, this is. I thought I knew how. You know, I thought I was pretty good. And I'm like, I don't know if I do that or not. And you know, my mom and dad, they kept. I said, what's wrong? I said, I was tired, which I was. I mean, yeah, something happened with track. No, thinking, okay, well. Finally, I said, what's wrong? I said, well, I just saw today what a real crew chief is. What I need to talk about. Now, that was a kind of was one of those lessons that taught me. Well, that's what this is. That's what this is. That's what I needed. Be like. To me, he's the best crew shooter period ever, as far as that guy that don't make difference maker. Was everywhere he worked, he ran good and won races. Everywhere. And he didn't work anywhere alone. It's hard. Apparently, very good.
81, David Pearson. You got a third.
Okay. That situation there, Ed actually sold his short track car that he'd owned for several years. He was about to get out.
Yeah,
is what it was. He had sold his race car to a guy named Ronnie Watson, who lived in Churchill at the time. And Ronnie had aspirations of driving it, but he didn't have much experience, and he was really busy with his own work. So I don't even know how that whole deal came up, but all of a sudden we had David Pearson lined up to run a 200 lapper at Kingsport. I'm like, whoa. So we took some time. We tried to, put some new sheet metal on the car and doll it up the best we could and everything like that. He finished third that night. And I remember it was either that day or the day before the owner of his cup team was killed in a boating accident, Joel Halter.
Mm-hmm.
He owned that number 16 cup car. He came to the racetrack and ran a few laps of practice, and he said, don't work on the car, just work on the seat. He had bad ribs and a bad, and he said every time he'd go over the hump, he said, take my breath out. So he had to pad the seat up and everything, but he drove it like David Pearson. I mean, it was pretty impressive.
I would say so.
Never been there, never seen that car just go in. It was, at that point, was kind of like, all we had left was a speedway car, and Connie Saylor drove it, but there was only like 2 races a year, 3 races a year. You could, that Daytona and 2 of them at Charlotte, that was kind of it. There was no Talladegas or Atlantas or Darlingtons or Rockinghams or anything back then at that point. They came along pretty quick after that. So Ed came from the house. He was at his house in the middle of the day, come down the hill there, and he said Russell Hackett, who was the promoter at Caraway Speedway, which we had been to, called me today. He said, Sam Ard has a car for sale. He said the car is an old car, it's 5 or 6 years old. He'd already won 50 some races. He said he wants to sell it. He's building new cars. He wants to sell this car. He said last time it ran was Hickory, way back at first of that year, you know. And he said if we bought the car, I think it was $4,500 for the car. No motor, transmission, but it had seat in it, it had suspension, brakes. I mean, fuel cell in it, the whole 9 yards. You know, but he said if you'll buy the car, he said I'll set you up a deal to run 4 races at Caraway, his racetrack, in Ashburn, North Carolina. And he said I'll line up the drivers, I'll pay the drivers, I'll pay you $1,000 a race, and I can't remember what. It's pretty good little deal, you know. And so we went over to pick it up, and I'm telling you, it was pretty sad looking. I mean, it had stock Chevelle snout and side rails, which at that time nobody was still not in sports.
Right.
It was long overdue, and there was not a straight piece of sheet metal left on it, the body, not one piece. Bumpers, fenders, doors, hood, everything just beat all the pieces. Just a bit pushed over in the corner. They took the motor out of it and pushed it up the corner. There was probably grease that thick on the frame. I mean, I'm like, so, and he said, the first guy that's going to drive it, at the time, it was going to be Richard Petty, which Richard Petty was my man. I'm like, well, I almost wet myself. And I said, okay, wow. And then he said, going to try to get Joe Milliken, who was Richard Petty's protege at that time, was from over in that area. And I think he said Bobby Allison and Dale Earnhardt. Well, the Richard Petty thing fell through. Just he wanted more than Mr. Hackett was wanting to pay, you know. And of course, then when Petty fell through, Joe Milliken fell through because he was kind of working for Petty. And I said, okay, first one's going to be Dale Earnhardt. But he was not that overwhelming image of somebody that bigger than life. He was not quite there yet, because we had raced against him at Lonesome Pine in Kingsport, in Nashville, a handful of times. And pretty sure every time we raced against him, we beat him with either Larry or John Utzman. And, you know, we weren't like, I mean,
The name just wasn't there yet.
no, not really.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like you were overwhelmed.
Right.
Like this wasn't the Dale Earnhardt, the intimidator, the guy that could beat Satan if he had to,
Right.
the guy that not, you know, this was not quite him yet. But he was right there. Okay, so we said, okay, we're gonna fix this thing up. We're gonna run a 100-lap race at Caraway, Ashboro. So I'll be honest with you, we dove in the thing, and I must have used 5 gallons of lacquer thinner. I don't know how much spray paint. We put all new body panels on it. We dolled that thing up as best we could. It looked pretty good. It was an Oldsmobile Omega, and it was a stock Chevelle snout with a 3-link. Now, he had raced against this car a lot with Sam. Sam won a lot of races with it. It looked pitiful, but it was a lot of race car. And we took it over there, and I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit nervous. You know, I just didn't know quite what to think. But it was really cool because he came in there, and he you know, he was asked about it a little bit. He said, all right. And he went out and practiced and ran a few laps, and you know, things weren't they weren't as competitive as they are now, and you had stopwatches. That was, you know, he didn't even want to know how fast he went. He didn't care. He had no care. And he said, tighten this thing up just this much more, around it to a wedge. He said, we're going to be fine. That's it. And, you know, yep, be fine. Don't worry about it. Then I think, well, see a little bit or something. I don't know, something. But that night we were running, Sam was there. We run second, you know, all night with Sam and Jimmy Hensley, who everybody loved, was driving his uncle's car, Hubert Hensley's car, the 63. And Jimmy had changed tires late in the race. And he come up and Earnhardt let him go. He said, I knew I couldn't beat Sam. I want somebody to beat Sam, so I'll let Jimmy go. We were in third. He said, I want to drive that thing again. So then the next race was 2 or 3 weeks later, and Morgan Shepherd, they lined up Morgan Shepherd to drive it. Well, the sponsor of the race, Performance Connection, sponsored and I think owned or sponsored the cup ride that Morgan was in, the 5. It was him and the crew chief people, whatever, had fallen out, and they fired Morgan. Like the weekend before this race at Carolina. It's a 200 lap championship race. I'm pretty sure it was a Busch Grand National race by that time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but a big, and it was a lot of good cars there. A lot. I remember Jeff Bodine drove Emmanuel Zervakis' car. That they ran 28 races that year and won 25. And he showed up, and Sam R. Now Morgan came in. Of course, he was not in a good mood because he'd been fired from his cup team. And here we are with the sponsor of the car on the hood that had been fired from and all this stuff. But you talk about motivated. Oh my God.
Okay.
Same thing. He came in, drove the car, and he said, don't mess with the car. He said, I want you to change the gear, which is another story. We've been back and forth gears. And he said, if you'll change that gear, he said, I'll win this race. So, okay. And I remember, here's me, I'm 22. And I change the gears, spur gears, you know, quick change your in, I was changing gear. And I told one of my friends there that's helping, I said, don't put that there. We'll be changing this back. We don't need to think this. We didn't change the gear back. He won the race.
Well,
He stomped the mud all in. And the thing about it was with him, we didn't have any radios. We had to, he was a good bit shorter than Earnhardt and Sam. So there wasn't carbon seats back then. You just kind of drove whatever was in there, padded it up a little bit or just did it. We had to put an extension on the throttle that was about at least 3 inches. Wow. Put wood and bolts and everything. Well, this thing just had a stock Chevelle accelerator mechanism, you know, and it wasn't very strong. Well, that whole, the pedal and everything, about 30 laps into the race, broke off. And under one of the call, we didn't know what was going on because he'd come off the corner and, you know, just stop. You know, everybody moving around. So, oh no, motor blew up or gear broke, which was a common thing back then. But then he took back off. What was happening was, this was under green. He had to loosen his seat belts and scoot down and get his seat belts hooked back.
oh wow. Bill reached the
And
pedal.
then he had to reach down there and get that block of wood, that whole conglomeration we had. He got it back and got it up under the seat. Well, then it started trying to slide out. So when the caution came out, he drove by and just threw it out the window. And so, what was that? And there, look, we found. I said, oh no. But that guy won that race that night with that, and I never will. Like, how did he do that? I mean, all it was sticking down there was a little old rod,
Yeah.
not even about the size of a pencil, and it had a sharp end on it, and that's what he was pushing on. And won the race. And I'm like, holy crap. So I knew at that time, after those 2 weeks, I'm like, I'm on another planet here. You know, this is not things that I have been used to. And I'm like, oh boy, better get on the train and hold on. Because this is going to be good. Well, Earnhardt found out that Morgan had won that race. There was another 200 lap race about 3 weeks later. He was calling Ed Monday morning on the phone. He said, I'm driving the next race. Doesn't talk to Hackett. I'm going to Morgan win. I'm going to win. He did. Passed Sam Arnold on the last lap.
Oh wow.
You know, And I mean, now, the train was on then. It was like, good night. We went to Hickory with Morgan later that year, a 300 lapper, which was, I'll be honest with you, up to that point, that was that was out of our league. Because there was a lot of good cars showed up at Hickory whenever they had, a lot. And Morgan was really good there. And we had never, we were 7th or 8th. It was a good night. It was just not good at Hickory. And I think in that race, we finished 4th, but ran good. And then the next year, we won a couple races at Hickory. We won a 200 lapper with Morgan on a Saturday afternoon. Beat Sam Moore, beat a lot of good cars. And then it was just planes going up then between him and Earnhardt.
So Earnhardt got 3 wins with you.
The best I can remember, we got 2 wins at Hickory, and we won a race in Cayuga, Canada, which was 1983 in the summer. That was a Busch Grand National North race. He called Ed. He said, "I got you a deal." Says Cayuga, Canada, which we'd never heard of. Cayuga, Canada, and I can't remember. It seemed like we got $8,000, which was a lot of money then. But the problem was it was on Sunday, the weekend of the Bristol races. So we had to race another car with Morgan Friday night at Bristol, and then we sent 2 brothers. One of them was a Virginia State Trooper. The other, Jeff and Clifford Davison took the car to Canada on Friday, early Friday. And Ed and I drove up there Saturday morning after our Bristol race at Friday night. And went up there, never seen the place, never heard of the place. He had never been there, Earnhardt, never been there, never sat in this particular car. This was another car by now. Had tires, McClure tires that were as hard as that floor, and now the race was Sunday because the Bristol race was Saturday night, the Cup race, and Earnhardt won it. Pretty sure that's the night his power steering went out, like on lap 10, and he won a 500 lap race. Because I remember asking, I said, "Hey, what did you do that?" And he just looked at me and went, "That'd be tough, boy." And we come in there, didn't get any of the practice. We were really worried because they qualified the first 22 on the first day. They had a practice that morning. No driver. Him and Buddy Baker came up together. Then they're going to qualify the rest of the field. And they had a bunch of cars. And they're like, "Okay, get your car on the line there, inspect. We're going to qualify at such and such a time." I think it was like 11 o'clock or something. We ain't got no driver. Well, get your car out there and okay. So we pushed it through tech. They kind of give us a little bit of a hard time, and we got it on the line and everything, waiting our turn. Well, they started qualifying. We still hadn't seen it. And I'm thinking, we've driven all the way to Cotton Canyon. We're not even going to get to run because we don't have a driver. And few cars went. In the back gate, there was no tunnel. It was back stretch of gate coming to the racetrack. It was over there, and I kept looking over there, and the minute I looked over there, and I could see him standing at the gate, watching the car go by, and then he jumped the gate. Here he come running with his ditty bag. And he saw us, and he come running up there. He said, "Well, what we doing?" I said, "We're qualifying. Last round." All right. So he jumped in like right there in that corner was a portal. Porta John. So he jumped in there and changed his clothes. He come out with his uniform on. He put had his hat on. He said, "Here's my helmet." Put it in there, goggles, all that stuff like that. And man, by this time we pulled up, he never sat in this thing. Never saw the track, no, nothing. And I'm like, "Oh, this is bad." He looked at the official, there was an older guy there, he looked official, he said, "I didn't get no practice." He said, "Did I get a warm-up lap?" Mm-hmm. All right. So he climbed in, and I remember he went out. Came in, tires were hard as a brick. Came to get the green, and he was so sideways, I could see the numbers on the right side of the car coming off turn 4. I said, I'm going to destroy this thing. So he come around, and the second time around, I think the pole was a 20, like I can't remember the seconds, but it was like a 22:10. Okay. So he came around and finished the white flag, and he was like this still a little bit. And he qualified like a 22:40, 45. I said, oh man, that's good. We'll take it right there. That, that got us in the race. Everything was cool. I could hear him, man. He was stomping at the next lap. He come around and took his second lap, and he beat the pole by and broke a track record by like 3/10. He went like a 21:80, and that was like, oh God, everybody's like, holy crap. He took the lead, started 23rd, took the lead I want to say by lap 25 or 30, took the lead, and by lap 60, he lapped the field and won the race. But that was an eye opener too for me, for knowing. And I saw just the things he did. He ran our car a couple times at Bristol, and it just watching him oh my. And I realized then, I said, this guy is something special. He's not just your next great race car driver. But we had him, we had Morgan Shepherd that through the 82, 3, 4, maybe up into 5 a little bit, that they're just standouts.
Right.
And we learned a lot in there, because you could do something with the car and you could tell right quick that it helped or not. It didn't take long, So anyway, that got us in. And then that Earnhardt started his own Busch Grand National team after that with his own guys, and we Morgan and kind of went on his own way too. He and Ed kind of fell out a little bit back and forth, and then when Ed we fooled around, we kind of hit a little bit of a lull, but we still had some good drivers. We had Alan Kulwicki. Of course, Alan was young. There wasn't a lot of money there, to help. But I'm really glad that relationship started, because I thought the world of him.
Yeah.
Great. Super smart individual. And then in '87, Ed got Harry Gant, and the rest is history on that. That was the longest. That was the best thing that ever happened to Ed. And probably me too, to be honest with you. Harry came in, and again, it was like all of a sudden, pow, you got a guy that can run up front anywhere you go. He's got notoriety. Skull, he brought U.S. Tobacco with him as sponsorship, and there was money in Ed's account. There was money in the bank to do some good things with. He got a real good deal with Buick Motorsports, which he got free engines at the time, the Buick V6s, and a lot of sheet metal support, and a bit of technical support, but just, it just helped him put on the map. And we had won Bristol, we had won Caraway, we had won Hickory, Richmond. Harry won 4 races at Richmond. Morgan won a race at Richmond when it was the old track in Ed's car. Really good, one of the best races I ever saw. And he actually passed Tommy Ellis on the outside. Ran him for 5 or 6 laps. And I'll never forget Tommy after the race. He said, I don't want to do. He said, I can't see the pace on the outside. I can't believe that. He said, it never touched him. Never touched. They never touched one another. And at that racetrack, the old Fairgrounds racetrack, that was almost impossible.
So you leave.
Yeah, I went back and forth between Ed and Charlie's team 2 or 3 times from the 70s all the way through the middle 90s. Even when I was working for one of them, I would help them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was other things I was doing in there too with races, almost like I couldn't do enough of it. I would go to some races when I was in with GC Spencer, but just to change tires. Just go to the racetrack, bunch of us get in the car. Seemed like everywhere we went, we left at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we'd go. My brother was involved in that. My brother was also, he got into the racing thing, and he worked for Ed for a while. He never worked for the food country. He was a couple years older than me, and he was the genius of the family. He went on. I ended up drawing salary and helping make a living and working for, and I even got to the point, when Larry McClure started his team from GC Spencer in 1983, I went to some races with him. Just went to the racetrack and helped on the car and changed tires. And while all this was going on, plus I was trying to go to school, and since he stayed driving back and forth, I mean, I had kind of full plate. But I never really looked at it as like, if it was Ed or Charlie's cars, I'm like, to me, I always had a vested interest, and came back and forth. And Charlie had Rick Wilson here some. I really enjoyed Rick. I've loved him as a friend, still a good friend of mine.
You win Busch race at Bristol with Brad Teague here in '75.
Martinsville.
Okay, Martinsville. That's right.
Martinsville.
Second Martinsville,
That was,
or the
that
only
was
Martinsville.
87.
Maybe, probably.
No, there was actually, at that time, there was 3 races. They had a 150 in September before the Cup race, and then they had the 2 doubleheader weekends. And Ed was not racing his car that weekend. I was working for him.
Yeah.
I think we went there on Friday and raced on Sunday. I think it's what it was. But Brad set his car up, went up and helped. Brad ended up winning the race. And we led the most part of it. It was probably the biggest. I would have to say that was probably the biggest day in Brad's career. I think if you ask me that. And I told a lot of people that I told Charlie to come home. I said, Charlie, I'm telling you, if you walked in and sat down in the stands, is that like when the race started, and you didn't know who was in the 75 hole, and you were just watching, and somebody would lean over and told you that's at the time Darrell Walker was on. He was head and shoulders above everybody. If somebody would have said that's Darrell Walker in 75 hole, you can believe it, because that's what it looked like. He was smooth as silk. I mean, just he drove the smartest race and ended up winning the race that day. And that was kind of cool for me. And it was good win. He only won 3 races with Harry that year in Ed's car.
How is it to go back after you just went for the weekend to Ed and pulled off a win with another team on the weekend off? Is
I just didn't think
no
about
bragging
it.
rights or
No,
anything?
Heck, Ed had Harry Gant. Ed had great cars and kept good equipment. Ed was just he would persevere to get, Charlie always said, he said, Ed Whitaker's the smartest man I ever saw. He said he was a survivor. Like Ed didn't have a lot of money. He dug and scratched. He was the smartest, mechanically common sense, smartest man I ever seen. Ever was around. All the people, he was mechanically the most common sense man. I learned a lot of work ethic from him. But he was not easy all the time to work for. No, he was hard. He pushed. But I had a lot of good time there, learned a lot from him, learned a lot from people around him, learned a lot from the drivers who drove for him, learned a lot of stuff. Morgan Shepherd for one. Of course, Earnhardt, Harry Gant, you can't help but learn from them, but others. Others he had. Alan Kulwicki I still believe if he'd have lived a normal life and had a normal career, that record book would be a lot different. Championships would be a lot different. Racing would be a lot different. And he would, after he got through driving, even as good a driver as he was, you talk about a guy that would have made an excellent car. On the day of his death, I'll still say this, when the day he died, he knew more, Alan Kulwicki knew more about the business of NASCAR Cup racing than any one man on the show. I'm talking about the whole business from one to the other, from marketing to engines to driving to setups to shocks to tires to pit stops to sponsors to running the shop and the whole business of it. He by far, in my mind, knew more than anybody.
That's another big step.
Yeah. Good friend of mine. I got a good friend of mine. I miss him.
89, end of the 80s, Rick Wilson, Bristol, Dover.
Dover.
Start clicking them off here.
Yeah, we had got 2 wins that year. Bristol, the spring race. It's when it was terrible weather on Saturday. My wife was sick. She had the flu. They called the race off. It snowed the whole 9 yards. Ran it on Monday morning. There wasn't enough people there to start a fight, but he just stomped them. You know, and then toward the end of the race, on the restart, got messed up a little bit. We thought we were going to. Got dropped back to third, but in 2 laps, he passed Mark Martin and Rick Mast to come back and won the race. Like he would, like I said, I wasn't good man. So that I became good friends with him. He drove here some more after that year, off and on, back and forth between some other drivers. But Rick was always the guy that we called up to say, "Hey, we got to have somebody that can, you know, lash the gas." I never will forget when we went back to Dover. He had been out of the car, but we went back to Dover, and I was really worried about him because the car we had not performed well. All the drivers in that, we were just landing. We were terrible. I mean, 3.5 seconds off. And I told Rick for Dover's already made a change. So all Rick will take in Dover. The only car we had to take was that car. That's the only thing that was ready. And I told Rick, I said, "Man, I'm just gonna tell you up front, I'm a little worried about this thing. I don't know if it's like the body on it, I don't know. But we took the land, I said, I never figured it out. It'll be all right. Just bring her on, like you know what would be the last time or whatever. Okay. I was still worried, you know, and we got up there, we're up there again, there's no monitor, nothing, it's very, very laid back compared to nowadays. But Rick come over, yes, he's driving for more. He comes down for he'd been in his cup car, he comes down, he said, "This thing ready?" You know, all smiling and everything. Those cars were rolling off pit road. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay." Never seen the car. Never you climbed in. Got, yeah, okay. Yeah, he kidding me. He said, "Yeah, you got this seat messed up." That's what he was. He said, "I got this seat messed up. I'd be lucky if I don't break my back." You know, just laughing. I said, "Let's go easy here." He looked at me like, "Yeah, right." And he rolled off pit road, and Earnhardt was running the race at that time. And I think his own car, and also Kenny Schrader. They were both running their own Busch cars. And he had seen them go off pit road before he went off, this practice. He gets out on the track, and of course, I'm standing on the bank. There is no spotter. I'm standing up on the bank. I can see the front straightaway coming off for a turn. That's about it. And he said, "Where's Earnhardt and Schrader at?" I said, "They're coming by they drive by, going by the start finish line right now." All right. They come by the next time. And Earnhardt is in front of Schrader by about a car length. And Rick is up under Schrader's fuel cell. Like this. Down the straightaway like he was at Daytona. I mean, he's under the turn fuel cell. And I'm like, oh my God. Well, he goes by off in the corner, and I see him go like this. He goes around Schrader like nothing. And the next time around, he comes by pushing her on. And I said, "Oh, God." He comes in, he is grinning as big as that light. He said, "Yep." He said, "Got that honeymoon feeling." He said, "I think the car's okay, bud." And I'm like, "Okay, good." And it was always fun with Rick because he made it fun. But that was an enjoyable time.
All right.
I always loved it. Really, I always had a good time. I always had, I always knew if something don't happen, we're gonna have a chance to win. So,
And he would be in and out with you all the way up until Andy Petree race, late 90s.
Pretty much. I left this area to, I can't remember the exact leading up to it, but talked to Andy toward the end of 1998. He had started the Busch team. And he said, "I need Poochie." He said, "Come work here." So I went over there, and I actually went to work, I believe, in December of 98, I think, with him, and before his 99 season. it was a 14 race deal with Kenny Schrader. It's like, how can you get him better? You know, and that was my first job out of town, away from here. It was very strange going over Asheville Mountain, knowing I won't work. Going over Asheville Mountain, going to work full time. And when I was 38 at the time, I had done okay. Andy knew me mostly from the Harry Gant days, because Harry drove for me, you know. And Harry would always give them a hard time if their car wouldn't run very good or handle very good. He would actually come over to our toolbox at times and get our setup shipped out. They had toolbox and take it over to things, you know, and stuff like that. So Andy knew, and I was, let's say this, when I went to work for Andy Petree, in my mind, I thought I was a good crew chief. Okay, thought I had it pretty much figured out. Man, things went up fast. I mean, he let me know, like he influenced me and let me know and taught me a lot of stuff. Again, it wasn't easy, not at all. But he let me know, okay, this is what a cup crew chief mentality is. And it's like, you hear football players, quarterbacks talking about going from college to pro and the speed of the game, being like getting over that speed of the game thing. Well, that's exactly what I went through. Like the speed of the day and the speed of like, and the intensity and like the detail and I's and T's and all this stuff is like,
This is the late nineties, early 2000s, NASCAR.
this is 99, I won't forget, 99, 2000, 2001, and very couple of months in 2002.
So some of the
It's huge.
huge,
And
absolutely.
I'm gonna tell you, the next, I'm not gonna say the next person, but the next crew chief that goes in the Hall of Fame needs to be Andy Petree. Some of the names they're talking about right now, I'm not gonna get in the middle of that, but I worked with both of them.
Mhm.
There's not even a comparison. There's not even a comparison. He was the most intense, most innovative, winning attitude person I've ever been around. Now, it wasn't easy. There was times if I had a gun, I'd kill him. But if somebody else didn't beat me too, he was hard.
Being a cup crew chief at this point, how many hours a day you putting in?
Well, that's another thing. My days got restructured from what I knew was a day's work. You know, like I could put my hands on anything, set the car up, put, you know, he said, we said in the car. So I'm sorry. He told me what he kind of wanted me. He said, your job every day is go around this shop, make sure you go to every station, everything that's going on at least a couple times a day. He said, your job is you're in the shop and at the racetrack is not to look to see what's good, it's to look to see what's bad and get it fixed and look forward to, go and think outside that box. He thought outside the box and lost. And
What-
things that were like, oh, I'm not talking about little stuff, I'm talking about big stuff.
Is there anything you can tell us at this point that?
Yeah, the first year I was there, he had been thinking, that's when, the rules for super speedway racing for Daytona Talladega. There was a lot of rules that was trying to get like, with the trend being like, run as soft a rear springs as you can, run shocks that hold the car down, to get that spoiler down as low as it'll go, and it's just pure speed. Cars drove terrible, rough as could be. There's another story about that. And it was like they was starting to come up with the spoil rules and spring rate rules in the rear and shock rules. But he had thought this through, and he told me we were going to run Daytona, and I got over there in December, and I was looking at the cars and shot and everything. I asked him, I said, what car are we going to run Daytona? He said, oh, look, we're going to do it Japan. Start little guy. Don't worry. So I kept on working, organized a shop, hired people, said, we're building a chassis right now. Chassis, we build all of that stuff. So we're building the chassis right now, so we'll put the body on. No, we sent it out to put the body on. We do it in-house. But he said, now, that was something that we're gonna try, because it's something that helps in the upside of the pride. You had to have, I believe at that time they were 350s in the rear, 350 brake springs, I believe, on point bars. All this different stuff, and there was no amount of rule on like how much crossway run. They were still in the baby steps, like, and everything we did was, there was no rule against it. He said, "We're not gonna be cheating." I said, "Okay, I don't like it." And he said, "Don't worry." He said, "The dude is gonna be out there. You could run a rear sway bar, and technology in sway bars or anti-roll bars was not real complicated.
Okay.
It wasn't near what we have now. So we're making this stuff up as we go. And there were some long nights in that shop. They built the cars. Don't worry, we'll cup guys will put your car together. I went down there Saturday morning. They had to get in there, and it was like, good night. It's like a bunch of red ants working on this stuff going like that. I couldn't, goodness gracious, I never had seen that many people on the phone. And anyway, put the car together. He said, "Now we've got something." He said, "We're going to do something here that's a little bit, but it's going to be better." So what we did was we made the right rear spring, and what a lot of people that probably want to hear this say, we know all about this. It's no big secret. We basically said, okay, we're going to run on 3 springs. We're going to put so much wedge in it, and we're going to use a rear sway bar to help prop the thing up to get through inspection, because you had rear spoiler heights and front heights and stuff. You had to be minimum. Well, if you put that spring in there, it's just going to fall over without the rear sway bar. So we made a rear sway bar and arms.
Kenny Schrader found it for qualifying. The rules is 360 pounds on your spring rate. Doesn't say anything about the thing to the spring. So when they came to qualifying, Schrader put a really tall spring in the right rear and a really short spring in the left rear. What that did, that faked the car out, made the car think it's running softer. Tucked that rear down out of the air, all the air flowed to that spoiler. Schrader went fast enough to get on the pole. Pretty creative, don't you think?
There's as much ingenuity in that, Jerry, as you'll find at Cape Canaveral.
I was just thinking to say, leave them alone just a little bit, they'll find an answer.
We had shocks that we put like 650 pounds of gas pressure in shocks. That's like a mess. I mean, I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna die right here. And it was some pretty out there stuff. And this was before pull out things. At least we didn't have it. Then we got so far along, and this is what's itch a lot. We figured out, wait a minute, we don't really need to be touching the left front spring either. So that car was riding on 2 springs, left rear and right front. And it was like an inch lower than everybody else on the racetrack. We won the pole for Daytona.
It's fast.
And I had one of my car owners tell me, I was like, if you ever learn to walk, I could be dangerous. So we won the pole at Daytona. That was very gratifying. One of the heim joints of the rear sway bar thing, it just couldn't take the load. It broke like 30 laps in the race. But they ganged up on him and drafted by him, put him about 6th or 7th. So he just kind of waited a lap, got his momentum back up, pulled out by himself, and passed off. That went to the lead. Oh, wow. Holy goodness. We had everybody shook up. That took me up to 2001.
Mhm.
He hired me. The Busch Grand National funding sponsorships ran out, went dry.
Who were you running? What was your sponsor then?
We had Oakwood Homes for
Right.
Schrader the first year, which was 99. And then at one time we had Albertsons.
Okay, I remember that car.
That was when Jack Sprague came along and got him to run about 3 races. That's all we could put up with. Fired him. And it and that's the first time we ever met Skinner. He won, run a couple of races for us that year, 3 or 4. Then we had hot tamales and
Mike and I.
Mike and Ike's, and ran a few races with that. A young kid named Derek Gilchrist, Neil with Sadler. And anyway, it kind of all that ran out. It went dry. And in 2001, I really didn't have a job, and he kept telling me, he said, "You do what you need to do, but just hold tight." Well, little did I know it, but like 2 weeks before the Daytona 500, they made a change and they put me in charge for 33 Cup. Joe Nemechek is driver. Road Homes is our sponsor. Little did I know that time that either was that Andy told me later, he said, "I would never have been surprised if the company pulled the sponsorship to stop anytime during the year." He said, "I sweated every month." Because they were, they were cutting back, they were doing whatever, and they never missed a payment. They're good people, really good people. In October that year, we went to Rockingham, won the pop seat 400. I ever seen so much popcorn in all my life. But Joe stomped the mud hole in them that day. And that was one of the most satisfying days because Rockingham's hard. Tires wear out really quick, lose grip really quick. It's hard to keep balancing the thing and loose getting in, pushing in the middle, loose coming off. I mean, it's just hard not to. It's hard to fix any of the three, much less all of them. And I knew Saturday we were pretty good. I can tell you. And Joe was very happy, and I watched her on the racetrack and everything. I said, "Okay." And I had this is another story. I had a little bit of an inclination that Andy wanted us to do some things different because of Bobby Hamilton was driving the other car. He trusted a lot of Bobby Hamilton's judgment. Hamilton had kind of his own way of suspension stuff and chassis stuff, and and I kind of felt, I said, "I'm gonna get a lot of pressure tomorrow to change a lot of stuff, before this race. And I don't think it's something I'll do." So I told my guys, I said, "Do everything you can before we leave the racetrack on Saturday." This is back when we had happy hour practice, and we'd come in the next day and we'd go on the line. I said, "Get the thing done. Everything you can do, get this thing done in the seat." I said, "Because I want to be the first one through inspection." Oh, look at it. And I said, "I don't think they do that song." I said, "Okay, to get everything done today before we leave. Come in tomorrow with the tires on it, and then motor up, motor on. So that's what we did. Andy comes in about 9 o'clock. He said, "Okay, I've been talking to Bobby." And then got this, that, and the other. He said, here's what I think we need to do." I said, "Okay, think to what?" I said, "Because that thing's on the line." "You done been through tech?" I said, "Yeah." "Okay. I said, "I don't know, man." I said, "Andy, tell me that thing's gonna be stacked." I said, "Get that top 5 ball." "Okay, well, what'd you do from yesterday?" "I thought we did a little bit of stuff." I said, "We did this, we did that." He said, "All right, we'll see what happens." Started the race, I think we qualified 13th, which is pretty good for us.
Joe Nemechek has come in, Bill.
Well, Joe Nemechek also wants that tearaway out the windshield so he can see a little bit better. No changes on this car. It's just 4 tires and fuel. This is really amazing. You've got a guy that's leaving this team, a team that doesn't have a sponsor for next season, and right now at this point threatening for the win.
8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, he got along about 4th and come off the 4th turn and drove under maybe Tony Stewart or Jeff Gordon and I remember Andy being on the box. There was a young guy that was the engineer in between us. He hadn't said a word after this. He jumped up like this. He said, "I've seen this chick before." I have too. And we won the race. And we had a good time coming back home. That's some of the happiest I've ever seen Andy and a lot of the guys that worked on the team, in the shop, on the team, the pit crew, the guys that worked on the car. It made, because we all pretty much knew that the sponsor was going away that year. We all pretty much knew it was done in another couple of races, and that hopefully, I was hoping, well, maybe this will help us get something next year. It did. That was a special time for me. I mean, all the races that Harry won, especially the ones at Bristol and Darlington, was a big deal for me. And Rick Wilson at Bristol and Dover, all those were good. But the man, that winning that Cup race in a place like Rockingham was like, okay, this is something that's not easy to do, and that kind of sticks with me, you know.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
What makes you leave there and go
Well,
more of McClure? Is it sponsorship?
The sponsorship dried up, and we made the decision to run the three races the next season to try to help get something. We lined up Mike Wallace. We qualified good at Daytona. Had an electrical problem on the first lap. I think we ran Rockingham, and I can't remember now what the third race was, but it was kind of, Andy said, Chris is saying, I can't keep this going. And he said, I'll keep you on the payroll as long as I can, but now I can't keep this going. And they knew that the Square D sponsorship was going to leave at the end of year two. So that wasn't going to last long. Hamilton took that to his own, to truck team stuff. So, we had bought a house here. We're in the middle of buying a house right down here where we live now. And it's like, okay, what are we going to do here? So Larry approached me and he said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, Larry, I ain't got nothing. You can come to work here. And he said, I'm thinking about making a change, but I'll hire you and we'll just keep you as whatever. So I did. And then he made me crew chief of that team, I think in June, I believe. And then it kind of went on more McClure until they closed the doors in 2000, after 2007.
Right.
Now he kept on. He tried to qualify a couple more races like that. So, but basically, I went to him before I knew I was thinking about. Thought I was going to get an offer from Penske to start 2008. And I went to Larry and I said, Larry, what now? I just need to know. He said, Chris, have you got anything? And he said, you better take it. He said, don't stay, because he said, I can't do this long.
Right. And they were just flipping through drivers.
Oh my gosh, and trying to find money and trying to, and it was just, it was just out of control how much things was costing. Just crazy.
How long did Kodak stay at that?
A long time.
While you were still there, weren't they?
They were, and they fizzled out, and all of us knew that their heart wasn't in it. Kodak's heart wasn't in it. I know that Larry they paid bills out of their own pockets for a long time. I know Larry did a lot more than I tried to tell him a couple times last year. So I said, Larry, you sure about this? He said, and I remember him telling me, this to show you his character. He said, Chris, if I shut this place down, what's all these people gonna do? What's all these people out there? What they gonna do? Where they gonna get jobs? I can't just leave them high and dry. Now, how many company owners do that now?
Yeah.
I hated it. I hated it. It was sad for me.
Yeah.
But Larry told me, he said, it's a company. He said, I can't do it forever.
Yeah.
And he said, he knew down deep. Sponsorship dollars were hard to get.
I think it was sad for everybody in our region.
Oh,
really, it was the whole team,
It was, I watched them. When I came here to work in 88, Charlie bought this building the year before, or sometime right in there, and they had moved into this building right over here. And I went to the first few races they had when they bought the first car from G.C. Spencer. That's another story. Connie Saylor drove one race, and then they hired Mark Martin. Mark wasn't the clean American boy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say too much about that, but he was lost as a dog in high weeds. But so were we. And so was Larry will tell you that. There's a lot of stuff, it wasn't a good situation. And I went to about 6 races with him that year. That was 83. And plus I'm working for Ed. I helped Charlie some. I'm going to school in East Tennessee State trying to graduate. That was I had 18 hours my last semester, a couple of night classes included. Just I'm lucky I lived through that. It had, and that's also the year I met my wife. Just I see Larry enough nowadays to see him, talk to him, that I got a good comfort about it, because Larry's doing very well. He's changed a lot through the last few years, and he's proud of what he did, but that's not the most important thing in his life. But I watched him, like, from here. There was a lot of times I was here and I was the only one working here, and I would go across the street, especially in the afternoons, late, and sometimes they would work late, and sometimes I'd go over during the day. I borrowed so much stuff from them. But I watched that team grow, and it was amazing. They'd add a person here and add a person there, and they, Glover was a big part of it. I mean, I had a lot of respect for Tony, still do. It's because I'd grown up racing against him, with Ed, and had the Utzmans, Gene Glover. Of course, Tony was his son, his crew chief. We raced against him at Kingsport and Lonesome Pine 1,000 times. Glover was about 3 years older than me, and he'd been around it since he was 7 or 8 years old, since he could walk. They were this close with Rick so many times, this close. But then when you got Ernie in there, Phil Parsons about 4 races, and then Ernie drove Atlanta in the first race he run, and he run forward. If they could have kept that relationship going, that's another record breaker. After Sterling left, they lost a lot of their Chevrolet support and their sponsorship.
Were you there the one year they switched to Pontiac at the end?
I was there. I went there, and they had Pontiacs with Skinner. He was driving when I went there. That was 2002. Up in the season a little bit. It was about 4th, 5th race. And I went to the races with him. Like I say, in June, Larry made me the crew chief, and we did okay some here, but it was a struggle. Fun for support there. And Larry was digging hard to try to replenish and strength, grow, survive and grow. And it was hard. It's a time. So after I left there, and then I walked in the door at Penske, after I was there about 2 months, I'm like, holy crap. So this is what we were racing against. Oh my gosh. No wonder. And then I got to thinking, doggone, pretty friggin' good.
Right.
To be racing against this. And this is just one team that we're racing against. Hendrick and Gibbs and all the others, Childress and Roush and Yates and all these others. This is just one out of about 11 that the multi-part teams, and that's 3/4 of the field. And like, holy moly, no wonder.
Also, while you're there at McClure, you're hitting a few other things. You got a truck win with Tony Stewart.
Yeah, that was Petree. There was a time there when Larry he wanted to go a different direction on crew chief. It didn't last long, and I thought, okay, I kind of lost my place there for a little bit, so I went and worked for Andy a little bit. He had the Menards thing going that he hoped, so I thought, okay, I'll go. Yeah, that didn't last long either. So pretty soon, but he had a truck that he ran a little bit, drove himself a little bit, and Stewart had a thing there. He had driven Andy Strick. I think he won 3 Richmond races in a row with Andy in a truck race, at Richmond, and it was kind of a thing. I was there for one of them. To be honest with you, we didn't do too much. We just pushed the thing out there and still drove it.
Still get credit.
I guess.
It goes in the record, right?
It's not really. I didn't do nothing like I had really down in the school, but it was a fun time.
Yeah. A
really fun time. When you have your hands on something or with something, you kind of realize, okay, you see how good this quarterback is. See how good arms go, or how good this pitcher is, or see how far they got hits this golf ball. My gosh. And Stewart was like, he was one of those, like, to him, winning that truck race was easy.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah.
He was a good dude to us all that night. He took time to help, celebrate, be happy, and congratulate all the guys that were on that team. I got a lot of respect for that after that night. I mean, man, that's pretty cool, because he went out of his way couple of things to sign a hat for one of the guys' wife that had asked him about it way before in the day, way back, early in the day. And of course, it was running the cup car and all this stuff and we went everywhere. And after it was all over, he came back to the garage area where we were tearing the truck down at like 12:30 that night. And he went up to that guy and he said, "Didn't you want me to sign a hat for your wife?" I'm like, yeah. So a lot of this, I've seen a lot of guys that, like the Earnhardt thing, I saw him do a lot of things that were very real.
When you get to the big time, Penske Racing, 2008, how does that even come about?
Roy McCauley, who's a longtime Penske employee, he was a crew chief at the time. He had run Sam Hornish. He had been with a team, I guess it was kind of their test team, kind of, sort of. Roy came to me late in the season and said, "What are you doing next year?" And I said, "Well, Roy, I don't know." I said, "I really don't think this team can do business." And I said, "Well, I heard that." He said, "Are you interested? What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for anything." So I've been in the Cup Series now and kind of like stay in if I could. But he said, and then so he said, "Well, I got something working." And what it was, he was wanting to be Ryan Newman's crew chief full time the next year. And he knew they were going to run Sam, and he threw in my name. So that's how it worked out. It happened. I went to, I think it was 6 interviews. They're the interviewing people I've ever seen in my life. Worse from the FBI. And if they had their interview process for president, we probably had to do a president. But anyway, and they were up front with me when I came there. They said, "Sam doesn't have much experience. We don't expect a lot right now this first year, but we've got the biggest sponsor in racing, being Mobil 1." He said, first half of the year, we're going to be, we're not going to have a lot of lofty goals. But he said the second half, this is Tim Centric talking, he said the second half, the expectations will go up. Second half of the year, we're going to have to do better. We're going to have to make some results. And he said, we're not changing the driver.
So you get into the
That
All-Star.
was a skew car.
Yeah.
Sideline.
Now, a lot of people were doing that before you, right? Well, people start. You're kind of credited as the man who.
Well, I'm gonna tell
made
you
it happen.
something. It's like, here's how they work. Through probably a little bit the year before, maybe, and the first part of that year, there had been some people try a little bit. And what it is, it's misaligning the rear end. It's not doing anything with the body. You couldn't. The body had to be on the chassis straight, or it was specified. Everything was measured. The body was measured off the chassis, not the wheels. Okay, and the body was on the chassis in the place it had to be. There was no tolerance. With aero testing, with wind tunnel testing, they found out, I'm gonna be honest with you, those CLT cars were terrible.
Right,
They were some of the worst race cars I've ever.
Was that the
I
second?
don't know how you can design anything that bad.
Was it the second year of the COT? Or?
It's second, it's
They ran like, 07 was like part-time, wasn't it?
14 races.
Okay.
And I don't think we had them on anything that was short tracks, road courses, and speedways, but no mile and a half overs. I believe I'm correct about that. So really didn't realize how bad they were. These things are tanks, and tanks with no tread. And a terrible sissy looking spoilers on the back, and the splitters configuration up front was third grade. It's terrible. And the drivers hated them. Absolutely hated them. Nobody could get them to drive good. It was hard, very hard. So we, people found out that if you put that skew, which means misaligning the rear end where it turns the front of the car front to the left, okay, it exposes that right side, like it's out there like a billboard. Well, that would increase what's called the side force, the aero side force, like astronomically. Well, nobody had done it more than what I call like a quarter inch, which we thought was like, that's a lot. No, it wasn't near. So my engineer, who at that time, my race engineer for the 17th time was Dave Ellens, who was a extremely intelligent young man. He's done well now as a crew chief. He's high, very high intelligent, and he was very competitive. And it came to me that he said, what do you think about the at that time, I guess it was called the Open, you know? I said, well, Dave, I said, to be honest with you, in the situation we are, I said, I'm going to find something that'll make us better in the World 600. We've got to turn this way. And it could be that. You know, I said, we need to if we can. He said, well, I got an idea. He said, I want to win. I want us to win the Open. That's my goal. I said, I don't really give a rat's eye anyway, though. Because one person wins it and everybody else goes home in the red. You know, and usually we're tore from. I said, but we got something that, you know, that's good. He said, I said, what are you thinking? He said, we've just been talking in the engineering room about the skew thing. He said, they've done a lot of wind tunnel tests. And he said, good night, it's huge. Like every degree was like 100 counts of downforce, which is huge. I said, okay. He said, what do you think? He said, what do you think? I said, I'm fine with that. I said, I'll tell you what. He said, most everybody's been doing 4 inch or 3/16 or something like that. And he said, yeah, that's kind of across the board. That's what everybody's been doing. It's really, you know, I said, if we're going to do it, and I got Andy Petree mindset in it now. I said, just swing for the fence. I said, don't dilly with it. I said, let's come up with something. I said, now let's go beyond, let's go all you get. His eyes got about this big. He was like, man, it's like a hungry dog at a butcher shop, you know, and he's like, are you serious? I said, yeah. I said, what do we have to lose? I said, if it don't run good, it's not a points race. Doesn't hurt anything. I said, if we're gonna do it, let's do it. Let's go all out. There was no rule against it. I mean, you had to keep the wheelbase right, you had to keep the tread width right, you had to fit this, fit that, but there was no rule.
Right.
Period. So they dig in. And they kept coming back to me, and everybody's asking me about this. I said, don't bother me about this. I said, we're thinking about the World 600, but we're you know, I just really didn't want nobody talking about it. All right. So the engineering team at that time was Travis Geisler was there. He was the 2-car engineer, I believe, but Dave Ellens and a bunch of people in that engineering, they went to work and found parts and found it really wasn't really that hard. Finding the axles in the ground, which was the hardest part. That so it wouldn't break. That's a lot of this line. The housing, most housings are like, if they're skewed, they're like a 1/8 inch this way and 1/8 inch that. And then you can do a little bit with truck arm assembly rear suspension that when the thing travels, it'll gain a little bit more. Because this side's truck arm angles are like this and that. It pushes this side back and puts this side forward. Pretty much just geometry. Pretty simple. Well, the housing itself had 1 inch on one side, on 1 inch in and 1 inch out, 1 inch. And we took everything we could do with pushing it back with the slugs, the alignment slugs. We had the truck arms all the way maxed, had the panel on ball, everything. And I remember when we loaded the thing on the truck, we pushed it down the main room, which it's all tile floor at Penske Racing. And they're like, I think they're 12-inch tile. I think either 12 or 14. I can't remember. I went out there and measured it. And I told the guys, I said, when you push this thing down, I said, I'm gonna follow it. He said, I just push it down, get the left side right on this line over here at the tile. And he said, I'm gonna tell you to stop. So the guy was pushed, stopped, and it was a tile and a half different from right front to right. I mean, the thing was skewed over here.
It certainly looked sideways on TV.
Oh, it was sideways getting on the truck, on the scales and everything else. And the biggest thing that happened was it kind of leaked out before we got over there. People doing this, and by the time we got the car unloaded to go through tech the first time, there was 200 people looking at our car. Oh God! But there was nothing illegal about it.
Right.
There was not one thing illegal about this. It was just weird. And I remember when I watched him go off pit road to qualify, and it's like, he didn't go like that. And there was a guy, Billy Burkheimer, who was NASCAR official, and he was pretty intense. he was over on the body stuff, and he thought, man, we got all this stuff in one box. Nobody's got an advantage. He was the guy that was doing the paddle down at the end of pit road, telling each one to go out. And he was standing in the car and he was looking at that thing. He turned around and was cussing. I mean, just a blue string. Like, I said, come on, Billy, But they, they got onto it there that week, and they really talked pretty ugly to us after the run. They could have made it a lot bigger deal.
What do they want to do? Finding y'all?
They ended up finding us, and I think they found some points. Now, they for a minute there, I didn't know if it was going to start the race. Because they made us stay behind pit wall, the fence behind pit wall, as the race was on pace laps, and we were sitting there and wouldn't let the driver get in.
Oh, wow.
And by the time we got in and go out, we were out 2 laps down. Time we got our 3 maybe. And after Byers, I mean, they pretty much said, okay, you're not going to have a chance tonight.
Yeah.
And I understood. Yeah, I understood. I said,
It's their ball game.
It's like, okay, we made a mistake. I'm not asking you to look over. So, I'm just telling you, we're, these little bit desperate times here. And we had to do what we thought we could do, and it was kind of a dumb thing to do. Took all the parts and all this stuff, and that's what all.
So it became illegal pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's some of the best
And
inventions.
I'll be honest, I was a little bit patooted at Darrell Waltrip. He really, he was one of the announcers, and he talked like, oh my gosh, this can't be right.
Yeah. Let me ask you this while we're on the topic. Have you ever been called to the hauler?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Not good.
Not good.
I just, biggest thing I was for was like that McClure. It was kind of in sort of, I think it was 2007. We went to Daytona and 4th of July, and we just, and I'll be honest with you, at that time, everybody in the garage area was, putting a little air pressure to their fuel surface overnight. I mean, it was going on. I mean, you could make a 22-gallon cell, 23, pretty easy. 23, it's not a big deal. And it was, well, that particular night for where we got a little overzealous. You come in the next day and it looks like a bomb had gone off. And they called it, we didn't have no choice, and they called it going through tech. And if I'd have had a good lawyer with me that day, I'd probably own NASCAR. The way I was talked to.
Wow.
For the people that aren't there.
It's rough. Yeah.
I probably would have owned their asses.
Mm.
But it was okay. And Dark River, they were pretty good to me, really. They could have been like, they could have like ended my career.
Oh, sure.
I didn't do it, whatever. That doesn't matter. That goes back to that thing. I'm the one at the table. I'm the one where the buck stops. Don't go to the next guy. Finish right here. And I learned a lesson right there, and they, it was pretty big. They made a big deal out of it, but afterwards it was fine.
Did Sam like the car?
He loved it, but he didn't have.
Yeah.
He'd been in that open wheel. It's a whole different kind of thing, right?
He didn't have much to say one way or another. And yeah, he had an open wheel, and he was really good in those things. I kind of want to learn to but anyway, that's not my business. But he made a mistake there on the first lap of the All-Star race, or second lap, or something, not wall. So the things went downhill pretty fast. He ended up with a red car.
You went like 2 laps down, I think.
Yeah.
But you still, by the end of the race, were like top 10.
I remember, all I can remember about it was being frustrated, but things got strung out. We had started back, but I remember him coming back up through there, and he passed Gordon, Connie Stewart, the other Penske cars, all the top, all the top. He passed them like it nothing. I mean, just go up on the corner. If they were here, he went up here. If they were here, he went down. We just drove around them like he's a late model. This guy's in the street. If I had to do over with and know what I know now, I would say, nope, we're not running this in open, but we're going to the World 600. and run, run that at the World 600. But more than likely, in that long a race, he would have the mentality to say, just don't race till the last 100 miles. And he would have won the World 600.
Wow.
And things would have been, I can promise you, he would have, I mean, if he'd have went, mashed it on halfway, he probably laughed.
Wow.
Easy. And it's like, so, but anyway, it was fun.
Yeah.
Right last, I have a lot of people ask me about that, and all the things we did. It was done that car. A lot of people did a lot of research and a lot of work, and dotted a lot of I's and crossed a lot of T's and thought through a lot of stuff. Because if we'd have, we had something there that would have been like, we are going to wax these people. And NASCAR got so mad about it. They said some ugly things. It's like we were meeting all the priority goals at the time. So the only thing that hurt me about when they made the change, they brought in Travis Geisler, who I know they'd had their eye on. He was an engineer. He's now, I think, vice president of the Cup Series or whatever. But done very well. Travis smart, understood it. What the best thing about that whole deal was that it allowed me to meet Parker quicker, because I would have never done that had it not been for that. I'm really positive that God put me in that place one that, okay, this might happen, but I've got a reason. We ended up running an ARCA deal through driver development and Cunningham Motorsports, which was owned by a guy named Kerry Schrader in Georgia. We ended up running the whole schedule, although they never planned the whole schedule. That 2009 was one of the most rewarding years I've ever had. We won 9 out of 21 races in the ARCA series, and
Second points.
second points, and got beat by one spot. And their point system takes in you get points for sitting on the pole, and we didn't. And the guy that won it, Justin Laughlin, did. Justin Lofton. And good battle all year. We raced hard with that guy. It was good stuff. It was good people, 2 really good drivers, never wrecked each other. Just hard racing. It was really enjoyable and rewarding. That year and on later, that bared fruit with that relationship. So I always feel like that's the reason. That's why all that happened. I mean, the good Lord had, he knew me. And even the timing of it going before, he knew. He said, okay, this is going to be your cherry pie in this whole thing. And it was.
And you got the next year, y'all ran Xfinity Nationwide, I guess at the time.
At the Nationwide, it was called Nationwide. We ran a mixture over the next year. A little bit that year. At the end of the year, we went to Kansas, ran the ARCA race, and then the next day was the Xfinity race or the Nationwide race in Kansas. That's the first Nationwide race Parker had ever competed in. We took a car that came out of the Penske shop. It was nothing that they were going to use the rest of the year. So they got it ready, took it out there, and sat on the phone.
You're at Kevin Harvick Inc.
Yes. After I left Penske, after that, I was actually there 3 years. In the last 2 years, I was involved with Parker's thing, and then they kind of we went like this. And I went to Kevin Harvick, worked there in 2011. Unfortunately, last year he was open. Great organization, and the way he ran the race team, I learned a lot more. Straightforward, a lot of common sense, a lot of confidence in what he had. Very concrete on, I'm not going to go spending a bunch of stuff on stuff we don't need. Because I remember him telling us he said, we already know how to win here. If you don't believe it, walk out there and count how many of them banners are hanging from the ceiling where they won races and championships. And I'm like, kind of like that, just cut through the bull and just, we know how to do this. But I was hired to crew chief Nelson K. Jr., who I'd never met, in a truck, a full-time truck team. And we had a good crew of people. I actually enjoyed that, had good stuff. But he was getting going, and I'm telling you, that boy had a lot of talent. He had a lot of driving ability, a lot of talent, and I liked him. We got along very well.
When Harvick shut down, you went with him.
Yes,
Over
to
Turner.
Turner. Yeah, there's more story behind it. And then toward the little past the middle of the year, they made some changes in the organization. They put me as crew chief as the 33 nationwide car. I think it's still nationwide then, which was kind of cup drivers. Mostly it was him, Kevin, Clint Boyer, and Paul Menard. And I think we ran 10 or 11 races. They're out. The only regret I had, they didn't make it till after Bristol. They didn't make a change till after Bristol. And I would have wanted to run Bristol with one of those guys, and then I ended up, they took me off of Piquet's deal, put Jeff Hensley on Piquet's deal because they needed a full-time guy there. But there was some races they ran with trucks, like one-offs, and they ended up putting me on those trucks. So that year I won two as a crew chief. One was involved in 2 wins in the truck series. One was Kevin at Texas late in the year, and the other one was Mike Wallace at Talladega. I doing manager at Barley's came to me and said, Talladega truck. Which said, where is it? So okay. I said, we're gonna have your crew chief in this. I said, okay. He said, on 33 truck. I said, you okay with Mike Wallace? I said, absolutely. I said, we'll probably win once. I said, let's go. And there was a story behind that. At that time, up until that time, nobody had really done the bump drafting, tandem drafting in the trucks, because went to Daytona and it was like some people tried it, but like the front bumper and rear bumper didn't really line up right. Like the heights were different and it was faster. So they're like, oh, that won't work. So I remember coming in the competition meeting, I think the week after the Daytona race, I was on K. We had a lot more things to worry about than that. But I remember Kevin saying at that time, he said, I'm telling you right now, when we go to Talladega, now this was a room full of crew chief drivers, foreman, management, and everything. He said, I'm telling you right now, he said, when we go to Talladega, we're going to be prepared in trucks to tandem draft. I didn't say nothing because, like I say, I had a lot more things to worry about than that. That time, trying to get going, trying to get my feet on the ground. And then, I remember one day, whoever else said, he said, I'm telling you, what if it's lost to my bull rabbit? He said, Kevin, that's when I seen Kevin Harvick come out. He said, I don't give a what you think. He said, it's freaking 10 mile an hour. And he said, we're going to do it. And he said, better tell you fat shop people, they better get them. He said, you guys go to Talladega, you better be ready. He said, we are going to do it. We're going to prepare those trucks. He said, we're going to do it. Learning about quality. So anyway, we went on. Well, I'll be quite honest with you. I didn't know too awful much more about it throughout the year. Again, I had a lot going on. I knew that they were working on them, and I knew they had it kind of, but it was kind of hush-hush. They didn't want nobody to know about it. Because there was a lot of prep in doing it. They built the front of the truck. It looked like one of these bulldozers out here to show snow. Did a lot of other little stuff. Everything is within the rules. Everything within the rules. But the time they went with one of they drove one of the trucks and Mike Wallace drove the other, and that was the one I was on. I'll be honest with you, Hornish Jr. He didn't want to do it. He was not for it. And his team was not for it. Mike was all about it. He didn't care. And I said, you play your card right, you're going to get a trophy this week. He said, you think so? I said, I know so. Well, Kevin told me, he said, don't go out there and try and do it in practice. He said, because you're going to be 7-8 miles faster than everybody. He said, they're liable to. But everybody will see it and they'll start doing it. He said, don't give us away here. The 2 yo-yos had to run one lap. Well, we got to see if it'll work, So they did right toward the end of practice, and I'm sitting there looking at the monitor, we're about 6th or 7th or 8th, speeds up here, and they come by, and I'm watching, I thought, oh, God. They come by, take a lap, and it goes, bink, and they're like 5 mile an hour faster next time. And I look up and down the trucks, and everybody was up on top, they pointed. They say this, you know, so here it goes. Well, the Truck Series officials did not like this at all. They had done seen the front of the truck, and they knew what was going to happen. They knew what was going to go on, and they were not happy. Because there's no rule against it.
This felt like the Sam Hornish deal a little bit.
Yeah, and the Andy Petree deal, when we had the 2 spring deal, they got onto that too. And you know, it's like, oh God, here we go. Well, it progressed into Saturday morning before the race. And this is my truck team crew was kind of a mixture of some people we just kind of thrown together, go down there, and they were all like, you know, just go out there and just bust our honey. And you know, we get the truck ready and everything. Corelli comes over and says, Kevin will see you, Wallace, Hornaday, and Bruce Cook in his motorhome like soon. He said, I'll take you over there. Okay. So we all ride over there. And I remember Kevin's still in his PJs, sitting there in that truck, you know, sitting in a big old recliner seat, you know, come on in and everything like that. He said, okay, we want to talk about this race now and how we're going to do this. Me and Wallace kind of kept our mouth shut. I just kind of sat there and just listened. You know, he's sitting over there, I'm sitting across from him. I never will get this. But Ron was not at all in favor of this, and neither was his crew chief. But they were like saying, well, NASCAR says, you know, they may black flag us, they may do this, they don't want it to happen, we better not show our hand, we better not stink up the show, all this stuff. Like that, I'd rather, let's just wait till the last 5 laps, and then we'll get together and do it. And Harvick's sitting there listening. And I never will forget, he looked and he got that look on his face like a rattlesnake fixing to strike. You know, he was all fired back in that head. He said, well, I'm gonna tell you what I think. He said, I don't give a so and so what NASCAR says. He said, we work hard. He said, everything we've done is well within the rules that's in our book. And he said, when you guys start the race, he said, I want you to move over, let him in front of you. He said, I want you to go up here. He said, who? And he said, who wants to be in front? Well, Ron didn't want to be in front because he's afraid to get wrecked. Mike said, I'll be in front. He knew. I mean, he was like a dog in a butcher shop man. He said, I'll be in front. You know, and I'm sitting there laughing to myself. I said, I think that's a good idea. You know, I want to win. So, anyway, he gave them a right act. He said, I don't care if you lap the field. He said, if that's what we can do, that's what I want to do. He said, I don't care about stinking on the show. I don't care if it hurts your feelings. He said, we've done the work to do this and spent the money. He said, all I care about is winning the race. He said, don't speed on pit road. Don't go below the white line. Don't do nothing stupid. Don't give them no excuses. He said, if they want, they can throw all the cautions they want to. He said, just pass them back. And a guy named Billy O'Dea was him and Bob Jeffries, who's from here, were the 2 spotters. And he said, you both listen to Billy O'Dea. He said, he will tell you exactly how to do this. And he basically drove in trucks. It was the doggonest thing I've ever seen hurt. He said, stay right there. Okay, move up just a little bit now. Basically drove the trucks. Austin Dillon and somebody else got together, and I think Bodine was running the race. There was 3 or 4 pairs of them started to try it, you know, but they weren't prepared for it. And Billy said, okay, there's 2 of them coming. They're coming on the outside. He said, it's okay. Y'all hold your line of 1 lane off the bottom. He said, when they get to the corner, he said, they're going to slow up. I'm thinking, what? They got to the corner. Did exactly what he said, and I'm thinking, and that's the easiest win I ever got. That's the easiest win I was ever a part of. But I'll never, the biggest kick I got out of it was Harvick sitting there and listening to all this and saying, I don't give a blah, blah, blah what they think. This is what's gonna happen.
Right.
And I don't care if it hurts their feelings. I don't care about nothing else. We put the money into it. It's all legal. It's all within their rules. Ain't nothing they can do about it. I don't give a.
Did NASCAR ever come back with anything?
Oh, they were all snarled up after the race. I mean, they were all. Wayne Alton wouldn't even speak to them. But Wayne's great. You know, he got through it. You know.
What paint scheme did you win with that day?
Anderson's maple syrup, truck 33.
Remember them?
Yeah. And Mike was like, I'm not sure that wasn't the biggest thing he ever had in his career. I remember the Victory Lane people got mad because he couldn't stay in the truck long enough. They were like, stay in the truck now. Let's stay in the truck, stay in the truck. I ain't staying in this truck. I'm getting out. He's got, woo! You know, they're throwing their hats down and all this stuff. That was a good time. I was impressed with the way he ran his organization. I wish it would have lasted longer, but times moved on. So then I went to Turner. So 2 years. Okay, we went to done trucks the next year. That was 2012. Had great stuff. They had another great run organization. The cars and trucks, they had like 3-4 Xfinity teams, 4 truck teams. Had some one-off races in both. Fooling with ARCA cars on the side. They built all their own chassis, hung their own bodies, everything. Did all their finished fab, all their put together, everything in-house. Body and paint work in-house. Had super people. The trucks were just great. We had the best stuff. Had Hendrick engines. And we just had the best stuff. And that was the first time I really ever had a full-time race engineer with me. I only got to keep him Andrew Overstreet. He's one of the hottest names in the NASCAR restaurant. He works for JR Motorsports. And I'm telling you, they make it easy. We won 2 races that year. We sat on the pole 5 times. I know if things would have gone into the next year and kept the deal the same, which we thought was going to happen, and ran trucks, I really feel like Nelson probably would have won 10 races and we could have won 15. Easy. It was that good. The people and the equipment was that good. It was easy. 2 weeks or so before Daytona, he decided he wanted to run full-time at Xfinity. And there was not a team and not that. It was like, I could kill him. And that ended up being kind of a disaster. So my last year there was not that great. You know, we kind of bounced around. I was not prepared to run Xfinity personally. And then I did not get to keep the team that I was used to. I had different people. Not that they were bad, it's just different. And it happened like 3 weeks before Daytona. It's like, what are we doing? And it just didn't work well. They ended up moving me away from that and putting Pat Tryson in my place. He know any better. Not the Pat was really good.
Right.
Pat's got a lot of experience, got a lot of talent, got a lot of knowledge. You know, he was well prepared to do that. And it just, that time, I don't know. I think Nelson's head got a little off base a little bit, but it's all okay, you know, and did some things that year. And then the team started to close down. They let me go. I spent a year with Red Horse Racing. Tom DeLoach, the owner. Brian Eichler, a guy that I'd never worked with, but a really good dude, a really good race car driver. He had a little sponsorship there for like 5 truck races. We did that. Finished 4th, I think, at Las Vegas. Had a couple of good runs. Made a good friend out of him. But then that fell through at the end of the year, and then wasn't long till Red Horse shut the doors. So that's when, toward the end, that's when I came back to Abington. And I said, okay, I'm done chasing this around. I'm just fine. Don was wanting to hire me, and we talked and everything. So I went to work for them in probably December of 2014.
So about 10 years ago.
I mean, almost
9
9 years ago.
Yeah.
And they had just started dabbling in trucks. Not that great.
Right.
And they had been, Caleb Holman had been running the Pro Cup Series, and you can see from those checks up there, he did pretty well. But the problem was,
It's like he won a championship.
he did. He won a championship. He won several races, all good. They kind of had that group outclassed a little bit. But they did very well. Now the focus became on trucks, and in 2000, I want to say 2016, we got Parker. There was
Yeah.
a little bit of a, I want to call it sponsorship because we didn't have the name anymore, but it was Rick Cunningham who had agreed. They had put some funding in the operation, and that helped a lot. He was with us there for about 3 years, and he was fond of Parker, but he did not force them.
Right.
We but we got and we made at the time. I'll just be honest with you. Don will tell you himself. It's like we weren't really prepared to run trucks.
Right.
Not competitive. Not the way they want to run. I want to. We've got to take a step back here a little bit. And I said we've got to reevaluate. And I said we got to make some pretty hard but good decisions on how we're going to build this thing. We need to get it to where I said, I can tell you, I'm not going to be happy if we're just going just to be there. So I don't want to do that. I'd rather go do something else. And he said, I know, I don't. He said, I'm tired of it too. He said, but we're not doing any more late model stuff. We're going to do trucks. He said, I'm tired of the late model type racing. He said, I'm whatever we do. He said, whatever my money's going into, we're going to run trucks. So we started slowly but surely, just kind of fixing things up, kind of looking like, okay, what can we do to, I think they only had a couple of trucks at that time. They were old stuff, so we took one truck, we put a front clip on it from somewhere and got some new suspension, tried to tune the body up a little bit, everything, and went, and it did, did pretty good, not bad. And and the engine was a problem at the time because until the Elmores came along, it was, if you didn't rent engines from either Hendrick, Childress, Roush Yates, Joe Gibbs, or I think it was Triad was building Toyota motors. You weren't going to run up for them. It just wasn't going to happen. And you're talking plus or minus $30,000 a race to lease it. So we battled that. We finally, probably right along in there, about 2016, 17, probably 2017, we started doing what we could, renting, and then we want to race at Talladega. It's like, okay, there you go.
Well, for the second time, Parker Kligerman finds himself here in victory lane in a truck. Big celebration down here for him and the crew.
That's sweet.
And Parker, your crew chief, was very complimentary of you, of this team, small operation. How special is this one for you?
Oh, it's incredible. Chris Carey, everyone who got part of this, Henderson Motorsports. That's Chris. Charlie Henderson, they've been one of the longest running teams in NASCAR. Food Country USA, here's Mr. Charlie Henderson. The owner, this guy makes happen.
That's right.
Thanks, buddy. Glad we came, right? Debbie, and we had a special as a decal on here for Peggy Miller, who was Chris Carrier's mother-in-law, and she recently died, but she was a cancer survivor of breast cancer and created a support group, which was a great big deal in Abington, Virginia. And so this one's for all the breast cancer survivors and cancer in general.
We started buying a couple cars here, trucks here and there that was, somebody selling and, trying to get bodies put on that they be more competitive, better, different parts and pieces. And we continued that, and we're doing it now. We're still on that slope going up. It's kind of a gradual slope. It's a slope that we can afford. We can't afford this slope. At this slope, you're not going to keep up. So you got to find your place, and that's what. And I think I'm proud of the fact that we've done that and done it in a way that has upped our competitiveness, that has upped the game for us. That we found things, and we developed relationships with teams that would do work for us, that were front running teams. We've had a relationship with KBM, which is now Spire, for the last 3 years, I think. Before that, we had a little bit of a relationship with GMS, did some stuff, and we went back and forth from Chevrolet to Toyota a couple of times, trying to just with different situations, like who we were working with, kind of had to be whatever they were as far as manufacturer, to be able to say, okay, I want you to do this and do that for us. And they're looking at us like, it's going to be hard for us to do that because we're getting supported by Chevrolet and you got a Toyota. So we weren't getting a lot of support from either. so it wasn't a big deal for us. And we just kind of chipping away, and it's been a little bit like this, but overall it's like this.
Get down to these two. Hocevar more than a second back. Kligerman gaps Zane Smith just a bit. One more time. Can he get to the bumper? No, it's Parker Kligerman winning in Mid-Ohio. Wonderful, awesome job by both of those drivers. What a professional go on it. The 75 deserves that.
Praise God. Great job, Parker. Great job, everybody. I'm so proud of everybody. I'm so proud of everybody. Love you, Parker.
A lot of our peers, a lot of people have come along with a lot of attaboys for us, and that makes me feel good. Because they're the people that look at you and say, "My gosh, what are y'all doing over there?"
Are you the only full-time employee?
I'm the only full-time employee here. I'm very blessed with a group of guys who have a ton of racing experience between them. Tom Clavette is our truck chief. He's from Mooresville. He worked for Penske. Pat Brewer is a guy that lives in Uvalde, Tennessee. Kind of same thing. He's been in types of racing all his life. He actually drove some late models and super late models. He's very versed, very good mechanic, very good electrician, very good at a lot of things that becomes very valuable when you work on these things. Phil Toole is a good friend of mine that lives in Bluntville. He's about 3 or 4 minutes from Bristol Racetrack. He's 73 years old, goes like fighting fire. He's been in racing all his life. He helped Ed way back in the 70s, when I was there. And he's been up here, and he goes and comes to the shop and helps us some. He's Silver, is Ronnie Silver's son. They run a body and paint shop in Asheville, and basically Heath, about all he can do is go to the racetrack with us, but he worked in the Cup Series for years as a mechanic and a part chief. A lot of experience there, a lot of background. Our hauler driver is John White. He's local. He's worked for a lot of race teams. He makes trips for us on top of hauling the trucks to race, so on and so forth. He's been around race teams. He kind of knows the in and outs. We hire pit crews from Stewart Haas, which are mostly Saturday and Sunday guys. Brandon Grimm is our spotter, the top spotters in the Cup Series.
Who does he spot for?
Chastain on Sundays, Parker on Saturdays. Last 2 years, I believe, he spotted for us in the trucks. So, spot again this year.
Do you know of any other truck team that has one employee that is competing for wins?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm not. I don't know.
It's a statement of fact. It's not a brag. Right?
It's a fact, and we don't brag about it. It's like, we do what we do, and it's not like I'm the only one that ever. I do all the work on the trucks. I'm not even close.
2024. You're a few weeks away from Daytona. You've got a new driver.
Yeah.
What does the future hold that you can see in your crystal ball?
I don't think about it too much like that. I mean, we as far as what we're doing here, what I'm doing here, and the people around me and everything like that, it's just kind of status quo. We're getting equipment ready to start the season. The first one's going to be Daytona. It always is. It always creeps up on us. I don't know how, but somehow they've always put that race in there, and we're never ready for it. But this year we're doing really, really well in the preparation part. Our Bristol will be our second race. And then we go to Coda, the road course will be the week after that. And I think Texas Speedway in April will be. But we're the kind of long story short is that we have struck up a deal with Stefan Parsons. Fine young man. I don't think he's had enough stuff, really good opportunity just to say, okay, he's a 8 or a 10 or a 7 or a 4. I don't think you can, and we've talked about that. But we're going to give him everything we got. He's got some funding. Down to the year, we may or may not have Parker in the truck somewhere for maybe 1 or 2 races. Basically, race team is looking at 49, 50 years. being in existence, and they got a good reputation. So I'm
Absolutely.
proud of that.
Absolutely, I would be too.
I was part of his first win as a car owner.
Careers have very much parallels.
Have come around,
Yeah.
and I always, no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing, no matter who I worked for, I always kind of kept a thumb, kept in touch. I'm looking at like, okay, I'm going on 50 years here too, and I'm be 64 in April. I'm just gonna keep doing it till I can't or don't want to. I'm not gonna be happy unless what I'm working on is competitive. If you're competitive, you're gonna have your chances to win races. That's what we did in 2022 when we did Ohio. We put ourselves, kept on building, bang, it's our day.
There's definitely been other races where y'all were in contention.
It's all about the people that are around you. It's not about any individual or one person. That's a little bit of a myth, actually. I've just been very fortunate about it. And I wouldn't really go back and say, what would you change? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I would.
Well, that's a mark of a great leader there.
I've been a crew chief for 40-some years. Most of those guys are complaining, or guys that want to be Sunday drivers. You better grow up. Because if you want to cut the grass, you better not mind grass in your shoes. And that's part of it.
Carrier's no-nonsense style has set him apart in the garage area. His fighting spirit and underdog resilience make his team a threat when his race cars and trucks hit the track. But after almost 50 years, Chris Carrier isn't satisfied. Whether a pair of hands, a mechanic, or a crew chief, Chris has made an impact on the sport, and there's still more to come.